ordered drone strikes in Syria targeting British jihadists who, according to the Prime Minister, were plotting attacks on UK soil. David Cameron breaking the news to the same Parliament that 2 years ago rejected airstrikes against the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Was Cameron in his right, and did he do the right thing? The Prime Minister also announcing that Britain will do its bit, taking in up to 20,000 Syrian asylum seekers over the next 4 years. The refugee and migrant crisis putting Britain to the test, and perhaps its institutions. How, for instance, will it impact public opinion in the run-up to that referendum on whether Britain should stay or quit the European Union? And while Cameron feels the pressure of the anti-immigrant UKIP party to his right, this week the main opposition party could tack hard to the left as Labour Party rank and file choose their new leader, Socialist Jeremy Corbyn, the frontrunner, in part because members are still haunted by Tony Blair's new Labour and its embrace of the war in Iraq. Today in the France 24 debate, Cameron strikes. With us to talk about it, Sunday Telegraph columnist Anne-Elisabeth Moutet. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome as well from London, Chris Nineham, Vice Chair of the Stop the War Coalition, of which Jeremy Corbyn is a member. Thank you for being with us. Joining us as well from the UK capital, Raheem Kassam, Editor-in-Chief at the London Bureau of Conservative News and Opinion website Breitbart. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. And
here in the studio with us, Florence Fauché, who teaches at the prestigious French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po. Thank you for joining us. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24Debate. August 21st, it turns out that was the date, an RAF drone piloted from a base in rural Lincolnshire, killing 3 in Syria, including a British national who was purportedly plotting an attack against the Queen. Haxi Myers-Belkin has more.
Turning to
the UK Parliament's first day back after the summer break, and with it the revelation of an unprecedented airstrike on Syrian soil. Its target, a British citizen fighting for the Islamic State organisation.
I can inform the House that in an act of self-defence and after meticulous planning, Rayard Khan was killed in a precision airstrike carried out on the 21st of August by an RAF remotely piloted aircraft while he was travelling in a vehicle in the area of Raqqa in Syria.
Killed alongside Cardiff-born Khan, 2 other IS group fighters. One of them, Junaid Hussein, was also British. Both UK nationals had previously appeared in the jihadists' propaganda material. David Cameron explained to a packed House of Commons that the pair had been planning specific and barbaric attacks against the West, including attacks on public commemorations in Britain. Reactions in the UK are polarised. The Daily Mail is backing Cameron, but The Guardian warns of a dangerous precedent, echoed by human rights groups and the Labour opposition. The Prime Minister does not have general permission from Parliament to order airstrikes in Syria. Cameron justified the killings as an act of self-defence under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. The first time the clause has been invoked for a targeted killing. Amidst questions over the legality of this broader interpretation of self-defence, the British Defence Secretary insisted it would be the way of things to come.
There are other terrorists involved in other plots that may come to fruition over the next few weeks and months, and we would not hesitate to take similar action again.
Cameron has said he supports Britain extending its bombing campaign against the Islamic State group to Syria. The latest strike is being seen by many as an attempt to galvanise support for such action before it's put to a vote in the Commons.
Let's begin with you, Raheem Kassam. Did the UK Prime Minister go against the rules, or even, should I say, the law when it came to ordering those drone strikes?
I don't think it's as clear-cut as that, I'm afraid. The parameters for war seem to be changing more and more. We've seen that over the last decade or so, with the increase in the use of drone strikes. I think Cameron has some legitimacy in quoting the legality behind the strike that he made. But, I've got to say, if I'm asked the question, does it make me uncomfortable? I think the answer is yes. I am entirely sceptical of government. I'm entirely sceptical of government killing people without due process. In this case in particular, I think, and I'm no fan of David Cameron, but I think he has gone to certain lengths to explain his decisions, and that's fine. What I wouldn't like to see is this become routine for the British government. I think now that we've had this situation, and we must do some soul-searching about whether or not it was the right thing to do, but it has happened, and I think now is the time for a broader public and parliamentary debate on this issue to determine whether or not the British people, and indeed the representatives they send to that place you see behind me, actually back this kind of warfare.
And let me put it to you. The question here in France was posed just 24 hours ago, when the French president said that for reasons of national security, he was going to be flying reconnaissance missions for the first time in Syria, and it could be very well a prelude to airstrikes. Is it, Raheem Kassam, the thing to do?
That is an incredibly difficult question, especially at a time when we're seeing such high levels of emotions in the debate around what's going on in Syria. It overlaps, and it cannot not overlap with the fact that there are thousands of migrants and refugees and asylum seekers, call them what you will, traversing vast swathes of Europe and the Mediterranean to seek refuge in Europe. I'm afraid that this is a situation that somebody has to stand up and take some sort of blame for this, blame for what's gone on in terms of the quote-unquote Arab Spring that Western nations were so quick to back, blame in Libya for where we were so quick to rush in to, quote, liberate the country, as Cameron and Sarkozy did, and the situation that has now been created as a result of that rush to war. I think it's very interesting, the debate that's going to go on over here, because as you rightly pointed out in your opening segment, the British Parliament voted against such interventions in 2012. Barack Obama, the US president, backed down when the Labour leader Ed Miliband was seen to be too pusillanimous, or to consider the other side of the coin, too steadfast in his principles to back a war there and British and international involvement there. Now, I think we'll have to look a little bit into recent history before we jump to conclusions on this.
All right, lots of reactions coming in from viewers, and the debate, I got to say, views are polarized. On Facebook, Simon saying, should you still be calling them British? We're talking about those three jihadists, or two of the three at least. It would appear to me they gave up that title by going to Syria and joining IS. How about calling them IS members? We heard Chris Nineham, the UK Defence Secretary, hinting that there could be more strikes to come. Your reactions?
Well, I mean, I think this is a very dangerous path to go down, and the actions that have been reported after the event. I mean, this discussion, by the way, is taking place after this has happened. There's no democracy involved here. This was a decision that was taken by, presumably by the military, essentially, with the consultation with the Prime Minister. This has led to a situation where it seems as if, we are moving into a situation of a kind of shoot-to-kill policy where the British government can assassinate anyone they like in any part of the world, and then bring some sort of justification to Parliament. Their story makes no sense, really, because if these three individuals were involved in some plot to plant a bomb or whatever the allegations are in Britain, they should have been arrested when they came back into Britain. And if they weren't going to come back into Britain, then presumably they weren't going to be involved in planting a bomb. We're told they were organising it from afar. Well, then surely the people they were organising it with should have been arrested. They must have known who they were. If they have such concrete evidence of a kind of plot, they must have known who their accomplices were. How come those people haven't been arrested and put in front of a jury? And in Britain, we have a judicial system that doesn't involve that doesn't involve assassination as a form of justice. So there's no sense at all in which this can stand up to any scrutiny in terms of democratic or justice norms. Therefore, this is a very, very dangerous path to go down. The suspicion has to be that this is really part of a more general attempt to escalate and to justify and ramp up military intervention in Syria, which is something the British people have so far been very much against. And clearly the government, I think, is trying to prepare the ground for further military intervention.
And Elizabeth Moutet, your reaction, you just heard Chris Nineham say no due diligence, no democracy in this case.
I don't see much democracy when bombs are being planted somewhere. And what characterizes the evolution of conflict nowadays is the asymmetry of the means by which terrorists strike at democracies, at the heart of democracies. And you can have one person with minimum means, and they can create both a terrible physical toll and casualties, fatalities, and at the same time paralyze the society. And I see Cameron's decision here as taking back the initiative in a way which certainly will poll very well, in a way that certainly has a lot to do with the fact that if they take in migrants, they want to show that he's not a soft touch. I can see all the political implications in this, but at the same time, my reaction, and I suspect the French reaction would be, considering what we ourselves have got up to in places like Mali, is that that's a nice strike. I suspect that a large majority of the population will be squarely behind the Prime Minister on this one. It's very easy to immediately criticise the government and say there are dangers, and Raheem was making good points that he wouldn't want this to become sort of a matter of course. But on the other hand, the last terrorist acts in Europe have all been by people who were watched by the police. The borders were watched. We knew about them. They had various security services watching them. We knew we had files about them. There had been, in the case of the man who tried to start a carnage on the Talley train from Belgium, the security services of 3 countries were after him, and nothing happened. And the idea of going sort of back to the sender, basically, and people who have already decided that they would commit acts of war against, for 2 of them, their own country, I think it makes it perfectly legitimate, and I have fewer qualms than I've heard so far.
All right, let's hear the reaction of the UK Defence Secretary himself, Michael Fallon, again, hinting there could be more of these attacks to come.
There are a group of terrorists out there in Syria, inspired, working with ISIL to try and carry out armed attacks here in Britain, on our streets, at major public events involving significant loss of life. So that's the danger, that's the threat that we face. And our agencies are working extremely hard to try and identify who is involved and what can be done to prevent those attacks. And if there is no other way of preventing them, then yes, we have to carry out strikes like this.
Florence Fauché, Anne-Elisabeth saying that she suspects public opinion will be squarely behind the Prime Minister on this one.
Well, it might be true, but I think it also really stirs the old debate of the Iraq War, as you were saying at the beginning, and at a time where Corbyn is actually, anticipated to be elected leader of the Labour Party. It also brings back all these questions to the fore. I think it's important to remember how much it has left a scar in the British public. I think it's very striking that it also, for Cameron, raises the issue of, he has a very slim majority in the Commons, and helping a coalition of stirring the Labour Party might be difficult too.
Chris Nineham?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why your commentator is wrong to say that public opinion will be overwhelmingly in favour of this initiative in Britain is because of the track record of both the security services and the government when it comes to recent foreign military interventions. I mean, it is deeply etched on the collective consciousness of the British people that both the government and the security services lied to Parliament, lied to the public about all sorts of things to do with the Saddam Hussein regime in order to unleash what was an absolutely disastrous war. So there's no sense in Britain really that just because the government says that these people were